Hey guys, so before I run the intro to this podcast episode, I have to tell you that this was I just got done recording it with Caleb from Kielpro, and it was such a good episode. I don't want it to go to waste, but I'm super upset and super disappointed because for whatever reason the audio just got messed up, and the desktop audio, you can't hear him. You could probably hear him a little bit through my headphones when I'm wearing them, but you'll just hear my end of the conversations. It was such a good conversation about different NFL awards and stuff like that we have for the first third, and he really knows his stuff. And you'll hear my responses to what he brings up, so it's not going to be equivalent to hearing his points and him put it the way he puts it, because my responses can't do those justice. But I'm going to put it up just because I thought it was such a great episode, and we'll probably be doing another one again sometime soon. We do the Dynasty Index thing together with the Dynasty football and draft stuff, so we'll be collaborating a lot more often than what we have in the previous. So I'm still putting this up, but I'm really disappointed. I didn't want to go to waste, so sorry, Caleb. I'm trying to do it the best I can, but this is, for whatever reason, this is the one time that it messed up. So yeah, enjoy the episode as much as you can. So I'm sorry. Welcome back to the Weekly Huddle Podcast. I'm host Owen, and today I have with me Caleb from kielpro88 on YouTube. How you doing, my guy? Yep. We'll be rolling that again sometime in the middle of this, probably. But for right now, just because they changed up the weeks now, there's 17 games, there's now 18 weeks. You can't really divide them evenly into quadrants anymore. So without having to trying to divide 17 into 3, I just divided the 18 weeks into 3, and that gives us week 6 as our first third of the season being over. And my idea was just to go through for the first third of the season now that week 6 is over, and say that who are our different end of the year awards right now for the first third. Obviously, it's not the end of the year. So I brought Caleb on just to say discuss it, see if I can get other perspectives and things like that, and see different arguments are for different things. I don't think I have any more set dressing or anything. If you have anything else to say before we get started into this. Yeah, they just posted up that the Kenny Pickett one. I'm about to dive into that soon. Oh yeah, I know. All right, so first up we got Coach of the Year for the first third of the season. I don't know if you have a concrete one you're on, because I bounced between a couple of different candidates. I didn't know if you had maybe one that you thought of this is far and beyond the best Coach of the Year right now. Oh yeah, and especially because from having Anthony Lynn last year, they didn't really change much. They didn't really change much of the roster over. They added to the O line, but outside of that, the defense, maybe even lost pieces, and they're still better than they were last year. The offense is, outside of last week, great. Last week was a little bit of an outlier for them this season, but they've been pretty good. They had that one game against Dallas where it was the classic Chargers thing where they screwed themselves out of a win, but outside of that, they've had some good wins and they've been well coached. He was probably my favorite thinking about it. But if I had to throw another hat in the ring, I'd probably put Sean McVay's in just because of how well the Rams have been playing. All his stats they're undefeated leading into half. He's 30 something and he's less than 10 losses when he goes from the West Coast to the East Coast. It's just such a well coached team, and I think that Jared Goff being their quarterback, even though their offense was really good, he kind of limited what their offense can show. And now that they have Matthew Stafford being able to show the full extent of what McVay's offense can be, he can really go out there and be show how creative he is and really present this Coach of the Year kind of mentality and play style that usually get people brought in. If you get a team that has the number one offense and is in the playoffs and has a really good record, usually that's a good recipe for having a Coach of the Year win for you, which is what McVay is getting set up for. The only problem with that is that the Cardinals are ahead of him in the division, so it'll be a little harder for him to win if he doesn't win the division. Whereas Staley right now is in the head of his division, so if he wins that, he could have an easy shoe-in just because he took the division over from the Chiefs. Yeah, he's been, his team has definitely done well. I was less off of him because I'm not sure if it was because of his coaching style that's changed it up, or was just the additions on defense and like the other veteran additions on each side of the ball to really bring that team together. But I can't really discount him for that because, like I said, they're undefeated. They're really good. They crushed the Rams. So I mean, I can't really fault him for that, and I can't knock him for anything. It's just that one will develop more as the season goes on, as we get to like in the later part of the season, because the Cardinals have started out hot before and then cooled off, but this one kind of feels a little different, and hopefully they don't fall off by the end of the season. But if that does happen, that'll really affect his chances for Coach of the Year, especially even if they make the playoffs. If they like definitely peter off at the end. All right, so next up we got Comeback Player of the Year. This one should be relatively easy. I feel like it's a pretty agreeable. Like, I know when I looked at other publications, they like gave their other options, but usually this one player always won out. Like they gave like Sam Darnold was one of them, was like someone like that, and other. But I think you can't not pick Dak Prescott for this award. Ooh. Yeah, I think the difference between, he was on a record-setting pace before he got injury, the just abysmal offense they had during his injury, and now that he's back, and he doesn't even have Michael Gallup, and he's still putting up great numbers, and they're still winning games. I think that like there's no doubt that he is the catalyst for that offense. You can't just slot any quarterback or anyone in there and then have them do good. It was obviously Prescott that was doing good. People like to blame like, oh, he had all these weapons X, Y, and Z, but like Danucci and Dalton couldn't replicate what he was doing. So obviously there's something missing there that Prescott brings to the offense himself. Yeah, another one I was debating because you brought up a good point. You brought up other players you were kind of on. I was thinking about Chandler Jones for this, just because he missed most of last season with I think it was a torn tricep, and he came out first week 5 sacks in one game, and he was on pace for like 50 something sacks in the season after that game, but it kind of cooled off. But he's just always going to be he's always one of my favorite players, and he's always just in contention for best edge rusher, sack leader every year, and he's coming off his season-ending injury, so he fits the criteria. All right, so next up is going to be something. This is going to be interesting because there's a couple players I think you could go for this. I feel like there is a front runner, which we'll probably talk about. But for Breakout Player of the Year, I'm curious to see who you picked up for this one. Really? Okay, so I'm sticking with a team we've already talked about. I'm going to stick with the Dallas Cowboys and with Trayvon Diggs as my Breakout Player of the Year. He has the same amount of touchdowns as Stephon Diggs and has 7 interceptions in 6 games. So, I mean, he's kind of just been, like, I was super high on him coming out of Alabama last year. Last year was rookie season, but so I guess 2 drafts ago. I was super high on him coming out of Alabama. I really wanted the Bills to take him in, like, late first, early second if they could trade back. But they didn't. He fell into Dallas, and I was like, oh, that's good. And then when he was on Dallas last year, it was kind of when he was coming out, he was a converted receiver. You knew he was going to take a little bit longer to get used to he had all the traits, really. He wasn't really solidly mechanical-wise, but he had the athleticism and had all these traits that you want in the number one corner. And in Dallas, you saw the struggles with him. He made some really athletic plays, like when he chased down DK Metcalf, punched the ball out for the end zone in that Week 4 game. But he really put everything together this season. I don't know if it's the scheme because he's with Dan Quinn. He has another season in his system. He's more of that cover 3 guy now in that system. I don't know if that's what's happening or if it's just he's putting everything together. He's working on his mechanics, but he has just exploded into one of the biggest play cornerbacks in the league right now. And obviously 7 interceptions in 6 games is ridiculous production. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, the Cowboys defense isn't structurally really all that great, but they have splash players, and Diggs is just one of the biggest splash players they could have on their team right now. Oh yeah. Great time to have a contract year. Yeah. Yep. Yep. No. That's your hope. That's how you pay him $20 million to do though. So I mean, it's a little rough. Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, there was every year for the past 3 years going into the draft, going to free agency. It was always like the Bengals need a middle linebacker. The Bengals need a middle linebacker. They drafted Jermaine Pratt out of NC State, and they drafted the other. I can't remember what his name is, the linebacker out of Texas, and they thought he was going to be it, and it was never that. But Logan Wilson was kind of an underneath the radar fourth round pick. They were like, oh, come in, be a weak side linebacker, special teams player, and then he comes out this year and he's already all over the field and he's making big time plays. And it's one of the reasons why the Bengals have been doing so well this year is because their defense has stepped up and made those big plays when they need them to make them. All right, so now those were all a bunch of second year players and things like that, or like in Mike Williams' case, 3 or 4 year players. This one is going to be, so we're going to go more towards traditional NFL awards. We got Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now I know there was a lot more hype around this offensive rookie class than they're kind of showing right now. So everyone was expecting, the quarterbacks, one of them is going to break out. They'll be the easy front runner for it. But it's really been the skill position guys that have really led, and even maybe an offensive lineman that might be able to take this award. That's a good potential. We might talk about him in a second. But I just know that I don't think that any of the quarterbacks are really the front runners for this right now. Anyway, especially not no. Oh no. Especially against Trevor Lawrence. Thursday night, it was like, it was this 2019 college football playoffs all over again? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're gonna pick a front runner, I would go with him. So there's two guys I want to talk about. I'll let you go through the rest of your list when I get done with them. They're probably on your list, to be honest. But first up, just someone who I think, if I am being predictive here, just because he wasn't really utilized all that well in the beginning of the season, but now in the past few weeks he's been starting to get utilized better, is Najee Harris. the running back for the Steelers. He has like 130 touches in the first 6 weeks between carries and catches, and the offense is basically running through him. Ben isn't really able to stretch the field as much, and they finally got some run blocking down against the Broncos and now against the Seattle Seahawks. So he's able to start getting the running room on the up from the line of scrimmage. He has that power, and he's being implemented in the receiving game. I think he leads the team in receptions, if I'm not mistaken. So if that production continues and the Steelers get that run blocking down and they can stay in games, especially if they start winning some more because they're at 500 now, and he continues to produce as he is, he might be able to fight Chase at the end of the year for that spot. He's not right now. He's not close to it, but I feel like projecting it and the way he's being used and the production he's having now that he's being used correctly over the past 2 weeks, I think projecting that forward, he could be a potential offensive rookie of the year candidate. Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Not often do you see a back of his size with that receiving potential to be flexed out in the slot and everything. So yeah, he's definitely an offensive weapon. And I feel like just because the way running backs work, running backs are like kind of like quarterbacks and kind of like they have to build a chemistry with their offensive linemen. They have to learn to figure out how this guy's going to block this way and like find out their tendencies and really know who he can trust to run behind. So through the first 6 weeks, you see now later in that period or later in this third, we're calling it now. He's starting to get more and more of a rapport with his offensive linemen. He's starting to trust them a little more. And I feel like as the season goes on, barring any major injuries to them, he'll be able to trust them more and more and really get a feel of how they're blocking on certain schemes and certain plays. So he'll be able to follow them and really up his production after that. And then, oh, yeah, go ahead. Yep. And that's a conversation we're going to have when it gets closer to April, because you have a lot of those quarterback prospects in this draft where it's going to be coming out later in the season that, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have a shot at, because they're probably going to be picking mid to late 20s, depending on how they finish the season out. And a lot of these guys are going to fall to that point, so they're probably picking their litter. So we'll see where they go with that. My other guy I wanted to talk about real quick was Raeshawn Slater. He's just been lights out for the Chargers. It's not really sexy to talk about or pick an offensive lineman for Rookie of the Year, but he's just been phenomenal. People were worried because he opted out in 2020, but if you go back and watch 2019, he shut down Chase Young in college, and then he was locked down. He was so versatile. He had great movement skills. It was more of his power that people had issues with, but so far he hasn't had any issues with that in the NFL. And he locked down Chase Young again in week 1, and then he hasn't really fallen off since then. So he just looks like one of the best young tackles in the league right now. And I know it's not going to be the pick just because it's not sexy. It's not the award kind of pick. But if he'd probably have my vote if I was the one of the people voting for it right now. Yes. Yeah, I loved him. Oh yeah. They gave up sacks against the Ravens, but he did not let up one in that game. Right. Mm-hmm. All right, so flipping to the other side of the ball now, defensive rookie of the year. There are some options here. I think there's probably like one to three that are like really standing out, but there hasn't been all that major breakaway like how Jamar Chase has broken away with the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. I have my personal sleeper candidate, but I was curious to see if you have like a list like you do for everyone else. Who you got on your list there? Oh yeah, they needed he's another one of those guys who brings the splash plays for them. Can play it all over. He was probably my pick if I was going to go with it. That's why I wanted you to go first, because now I'm going to talk about. There's probably only like one or two other guys who could really considerably win it. I'll talk about my dark horse, we'll call him. Ahsante Samuel from the Chargers, another Charger rookie. He's been great. He had a couple of really highlight interceptions the first couple weeks of the season. Solid coverage. He struggled a little bit here or there, but as someone who's bringing like how Parsons has been solid with the flash plays. Samuel's been pretty good. He's had some mistakes here or there, but he's had those big splash plays as well. Really showed up against that Chiefs game, picking off Patrick Mahomes, really helping them seal that win there. So I if I had to argue anyone else other than Parsons, I'd probably pick Samuel, but I don't know if you have any other options that you're thinking of outside of those two. Yeah, he's out. He's out now 4 to 6 weeks. Right. Yep. Oh, I gotta. It's kind of hard because like there's been so many guys who were good for like a week or two and then haven't put together a consistent 6-week performance. Where like so I had Greg Rousseau on my list because like he had those flash games against the Chiefs. He had a really good game against the Dolphins. JOK has been really good and now he's out. So it's like all these guys who you knew going into the season like they're gonna be really good. Quiddy Pay's been hurt. I'm trying to think. Farley just got hurt last night or 2 nights ago, whatever. Monday night. That's what I'm trying to think of. The week's kind of melding into itself, but he's been hurt. I'm just trying to think of like because this past draft was so offensive heavy at the top. Like you had like J.C. Horn, really good at the beginning of the season. He's out. Like you had all these guys who were drafted in the first round, like or a high second round, like with Samuel, that were playing really good. But they're either hurt, they aren't consistently playing all that great. They'll have flash or splash plays, but they're not being consistent throughout the week. So Parsons is really kind of like Parsons, and like I said, I'll throw Samuel's hat in there. But like those are like there's no one really separating themselves like elite wise. There's no like Chase Young. There's no Devin White. There's no player that's coming out that's been elite every single week as soon as he comes into the league. Kind of like how we have an offensive side of ball with Jamar Chase. Zaven Collins. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like also like you got like Eric Stokes and some people like that, like some of those later first round corners and stuff like that. I don't know how I haven't really been checking on my Greg Newsome and stuff like that. So those guys, their still names are there, and I know Stokes played well in primetime when I caught him on there a little bit. So I could see him maybe if he puts together a good last 2/3 of the season, he could come out. But right now, I think it's Parsons to lose at this point. Okay, so right now, as of going into week 7, tonight is the Thursday Night Football of week 7. Who is your biggest player or team is your biggest disappointment of the season right now? Yeah, I'd say that's a good one, especially because you're going for the dynasty side of it. I was just thinking about like overall like the perceptions I had coming into the season. I have a player in a team I'm really thinking of. The player I have is probably that I have a big disappointment of is right now is Sam Darnold, just because he came into the Panthers and they were talking him up all through the offseason. You know, people were like, "Oh, he's got weapons now, this and that." And he came out and he started the season off. He was all right. They were winning games. He was doing decently. And then like last week, he had 90 yards passing in the third quarter, and he has like as many rushing touchdowns as he was supposed to come in. And I thought like maybe they could unlock this talent that he's been hyped up to have for all this time. And he has weapons now. He's outside there. He's escaped the Jets terribleness, and he's still not doing all that great, where people were like, oh, maybe he can be their future quarterback, where now people are talking about Carolina drafting a quarterback or trading for a quarterback or something like that, now that Darnold has kind of floundered in these past 3 weeks. I was out on him when he was on the Jets. Because I was higher on him when he was in college. Maybe not. I didn't have him as QB1, obviously, but he was still someone I thought was super talented, could come in the league and be kind of like a starter, an entrenched starter, like a player maybe you don't see going for the MVP or top 5, but is your quarterback for 10 plus years. And then he went to the Jets, and he was just so bad. He was terrible. But then when he finally got traded out, and he went to the Panthers with Joe Brady and had DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson. He had all these weapons, and I'm like, oh, well, now he's got this really good offensive coordinator, and he's got this really good head coach, and he's away from the Jets, and I was still thinking about, oh, that guy, that really super talented guy I saw coming out of the 2018 draft, maybe shouldn't have been the 3rd overall pick, but still had a lot of talents that could have been, improved on. And for like the first week or two, he was proving me right, and he was getting some passing yards, he had some rushing touchdowns, he was unlocking some of the athleticism he had. And then he just fell off a cliff again, and it was just kind of like, oh, that's disappointing. That was one of the ones where I actively looked at his play because I was following him every single week, so I wanted him to succeed. And then I verbally said out loud, "Oh, that's disappointing." After the Vikings game, I was just like, "That's upsetting." Yeah. Right, you think he put it together because back in, 2017, 2018, around there, or it was 2019, I don't even remember. How long has he even been in the league? He was drafted in 2016, I believe, right? So, right. Yeah, and then, and then he looked like an MVP candidate, and he gets hurt, comes back, you're like, oh, well, he's still shaking off the injuries, plus the Eagles aren't that great. And then he gets traded to a team that had top 10 offense, top 10 defense last year with Philip Rivers, and you're like, oh, and it's his offensive coordinator from when he was the MVP, like one of the MVP candidates. So you're like, oh, maybe he's going to be able to unlock what he was doing that year in the Eagles. He's a couple years removed from the injury. He's back with the coach who helped him do his best football, and he's with a team that was really good on both sides of the ball last year, and they've just been terrible. Oh, Jesus. Ugh. So now I'm going to ask you, flipping on the other side, who are the players you came in kind of lower on in the season that have surprised you and really, shown you up kind of basically on your pre-existing opinions before the season started 6 weeks in? Finally. Right, it's like he was so, when he was drafted by the Vikings, it was like, you're our number 1 receiver now and return guy, you're going to be this, big play dude, and he never really escaped from that special teams role. And then he went to the Bears, he went to the Patriots, and the Patriots, I think, was the first team that really started using him as like a running back kind of player. And then every place he's gone to since then has tried to use him that same way. And for whatever reason, whether it's Arthur Smith or he's just had enough years to really get used to it now, or if it's a system, he's starting to break out in a way that people kind of assumed he would when he was drafted. And, better late than never. But, he came in, I was like, oh, he'll be a good return guy for them. And I never thought how deep that offense was. Another sleeper disappointment was Kyle Pitts so far this season. He hasn't really done on the grave. Again, I don't know if the scheme or what. But going back to the Patterson, they had so many pieces like Pitts, Ridley, Russell Gage has been talked up a lot. And they had running backs like Mike Davis and Quandre Olsen. And you're like, oh, he's not really going to get that many touches outside of special teams. But then he's been like this dual threat receiver running back player that he never really, he showed flashes of, but not this consistently. Yep. So from my surprise, it was a player, it's kind of hard to describe because I was high on him a couple years ago, then he dropped down, And I was like, oh, he's good, but, the team sucks around him, and he's not really performing as well. But now he's back up to being one of the top contributors at the position. It's not going to be one of the biggest, juxtaposition ones, but I'm talking about Derek Carr has been phenomenal, especially the beginning of the season. People were talking about he was in the MVP race, especially when they were 3-0. He was just playing lights out for the beginning of the season, and before he had the injury back in 2016, I believe it was, he was really good. And I was really happy for him. He got that big contract. He got hurt, and it was really the same. And then all of a sudden this year, he's putting it all together again. I don't know if it was they finally brought in enough pieces. His offensive line isn't all that great either, so it's like he's sitting back there making plays for them, winning games, helping them win games, despite the controversy of their head coaching position and the weakness that is their O-line and their defense still not being all that amazing. He's just really made magic happen for the Raiders, and I saw this back before the injury, but not since then. Right. Yep. And then maybe one other one it's another one that's not really super out there because he has been productive in the past. But Debo Samuel, being he was the leading receiver in the league for the first 3 weeks, he's still top 6, I think. And like you said, you were expecting Brandon Ayuk to come out and make a big contribution. And after the last season where it was kind of they were meh and they didn't really attack the pass all that well, and Debo was constantly hurt and banged up, I didn't really expect him to come out and be one of the top 10 receiving yard receivers in the league this year. And so when I saw that, I was oh, that's interesting. What's going on over there? And I went and checked it out. I'm oh, he's been playing really well, and they're utilizing him very well. I know they always utilized him like a kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of guy, but as a receiver, he's been really surprising me in that facet of the game. Oh, yeah. I'm surprised they haven't put him back there yet. Yeah. Yep. And like I said, came in kind of low on him, so that's why I kind of made my honorable mention there. So before we get to the MVP, we're going to talk about I'm going to run my little ad again for our little adventure we're doing right now with this the Dynasty Index, with talking about Dynasty Fantasy Sports and the NFL Draft. We got a whole database over there. I'll run the ad real quick, and then we'll get into the MVP conversation. For MVP, attention all Weekly Huddle followers, I have a huge announcement. I have joined up with Caleb from kielpro88 on YouTube to help work on a draft and dynasty football database. It is called the Dynasty Index and contains detailed content revolving around both dynasty fantasy football and NFL draft coverage. On this new platform, you will find dynasty player rankings, NFL draft prospect rankings, detailed player scouting reports, and much more. I am so happy to be working on this project with Caleb and the rest of our contributors, and we've already gotten so much information and exclusive content on the site ready for you to dive into. I personally have been putting a ton of effort into this, and I'm recommending you check it out. The subscription prices are $3 a month or $20 a year, and if you ask me, you get way more on the site than what you're paying for, so it's a definite steal. If you're interested, contact Caleb on Twitter at kielpro88 or email him at calebschmidt7@gmail.com. Once you get your subscription, you'll have full access to the Notion server, and will even be able to have access to it through the Notion app on your phone. So don't wait, subscribe now, and get access to one of the best draft databases and dynasty ranking sites. I feel like there's been a lot of arguments and a lot of movement. Usually this far in the season, there's usually someone cemented at the top or the couple top guys with the odds. But the odds have been moving up and down a lot. So I'm curious to see if you had to stop and pick a guy, one dude right now that you would put the MVP on this far in the season. Who is the MVP of the first third of the NFL season this year? Yep. And he's had a hell of a season right now, and the Cardinals are the only undefeated team in the league as of this, recording. So, I mean, he's definitely earned that. He's been one of those guys that, opposite of what I said, who's been in those MVP conversations consistently as everything else has moved around him. Who is your other player? I'm just curious. Who's your runner-up that you were talking about real quick? Okay. Yep, and the odds makers reflect that right now, with those two being some of the highest betting odds right now, or at least they were before the Monday game. I haven't checked them since then, but those two were in the top, I think, one or two in the odds, going back and forth there. I'm glad you said those two, because the two guys I want to talk about are neither of them. I do like both of them, but I'll make my argument as to why I have these two guys as my MVPs over them right now. First off, I'll just say, so for your guy, for Kyler and for Allen, they've the story has been they've been really good, but also kind of under the radar is that their defenses have both been pretty fantastic as well. Like the Cardinals, they won really good against the 49ers with a really good defensive game plan. They brought these veterans in, these young chess piece kind of players with Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons. They've really kind of shown out. Their secondary has not been nearly as bad as people thought they were going to be. Still could use some additions there, but they haven't been terrible. And like they just held the Browns to 14 points. They held the 49ers to 6-10, I think, or 17, something like that. And they've been really good. And the same with the Bills. The Bills have 2 shutouts where the rest of the league has 1 in total. So their defense has really stepped up back to like 2019 form. So those two guys, I feel like even if they, so they're having great production. They're having MVP level production. But I'm thinking if they dropped down even like a peg, like not like like they have not fallen off, but like if they had like slightly less production, they'd still probably be winning games with consistency and still be leading their offenses pretty well. Whereas, so for my MVP vote, and it kind of hurts me to say this, but I think just looking at it objectively, if I had to give the MVP to someone this far in the season, I'd have to give it to Tom Brady for the Bucs because their defense has been hot garbage. They've had so many injuries in the secondary. JPP has been out for so long, and they're still, I believe are they 5-1 or 4-2? I think they're 5-1. They lost to the Rams, and I think they haven't lost since. They beat the Eagles. They beat the Cowboys. They beat the Patriots. I believe they're 5-1. They're 5-1 despite their defense not looking great. Like when you saw in the loss of that Rams, it was because the defense was just so terrible against the pass. They've lost so many pieces in the defensive backfield. They lost a lot of pieces up front, pass rush wise. Now they're starting to get them back, but I feel like Brady has been in command of that offense and really keeping them in games. And like even games where because of their defense they haven't been blowing people out, like the Patriots game or the Cowboys game, where their defense let them down and let the other team back in, he's been able to lead drives, and he's still leading the league in passing yards. He has thrown a couple interceptions, but I only really contribute like one of those to his fault. A couple of them were drop passes or Hail Mary attempts and stuff like that. The Eagles one was really the only one I'd really cough up to him. So as of someone who, if you remove them from the equation or had them play any worse than they actually are playing, I don't think the Bucs would be 5-1 without Brady playing the way he is right now. And then for my second one, and this may be recency bias, and it may be my heart being in pain, but I'm going to have to give it to Derrick Henry because it's so tough to defend him. I saw this tweet. It was, I can't remember who tweeted it out. It was a former player tweeted out saying that when we were all kids and you played Madden and you created a player, everyone created Derrick Henry. That was the player you made in Madden to go out and just kill people with. And he's so fast, he's so big, he's so hard to tackle. It's kind of just, he's a freak of nature. And I think that the Titans defense hasn't been all that great, similar to the Bucs defense. And they're only 4-2 now. So I mean, they have a decent record as well. But I don't think that's chalked up to the passing game as much because Julio Jones and A.J. Brown have been hurt, and they're still winning. They're still coming back. They're still getting, these points. They're still putting points on the board and keeping in these shootouts. But it's been Derrick Henry who's been carrying the load, leading the league. I believe he's leading the league in rushing yards. He has a couple receiving touchdowns. He's clearly the best running back in the league right now, and he's single-handedly carrying that offense to relevancy and the whole team because the defense has been struggling outside of a couple pieces like Harold Landry. Right. So I feel like if any one player was knocked out with injury and it would have impacted a team as much as like the most out of anything, I think Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry ever got hurt, the identity of that team would be gone. They would be totally out of there. Like, say Josh Allen got hurt, Mitchell Trubisky could come in and potentially it would be a fall off, right? It wouldn't be good, but I feel like it'd be less of a fall if Henry got hurt and they had to supplement him with Jeremy McNichols or anyone else who they have back there. Because he's just been so ever present and just takes so many of the touches in that offense. All right, hit me. Yep, there it is. Oh yeah. Oh, I know. Oh yeah, they lost Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters for the year. The play after they lost Gus Edwards, and they were just like, all right, that's it. Practice is over. We're done. Oh yeah. So, like, Allen Murray, Mahomes, Brady, Henry have all put up the numbers of an MVP. But if you look at just the missed opportunities and the adversity that Lamar has gone through, you could reasonably say he's the number one MVP vote. But I don't think that at the end of the year, if say you just copy pasted this third into the rest of them, and you said, well, if Hollywood would have caught those 10 passes he dropped for touchdowns, and Lamar would have 10 extra touchdown passes, or if they didn't get hurt, this and that. That is something that we would consider making this argument here, but I don't think voters would consider it going into it. They would just look at, who has the best numbers, who has the best record, and give them that vote for that. So I feel like Lamar is a great argument. It's just that the things that are holding him back are out of his control, but because of that, and maybe unfairly so, he's not going to get voted for that because of the elements that are just kind of shitting on his efforts right now. All right, that's the last award we got there. Any closing remarks? I know we ran the ad for the website, but I do want people to go check that out. It's something that we both put a lot of time and effort into, working really hard at. So if you can, go check it out. It's a $3 per month and $20 a year subscription right now. You get breakdowns for dynasty players and draft prospects and everything for not even just this draft. We have prospects up for 2023 and 2024 already. So we're working really hard at it. Other than that, I know, go check him out. It's kielpro88 on YouTube. He does prospect cut-ups for draft prospects and everything like that. And anything else you want to advertise over there at the end of it? Yeah, no problem. Oh yeah, I'm totally looking forward to those ones. I'm getting prepped up for that. All right, so I think we're done with that. All right.